Ever notice how a cartoon about three scam-loving kids feels more clever than half the shows today? What they did in the early 2000s still blows modern cartoons out of the water. Ed, Edd and Eddy isn't just a silly show about jawbreakers and ridiculous scams. Beneath the messy hair and outrageous plans, it was experimenting with storytelling, animation, and humor in ways that most cartoons didn't dare to touch. Today, we're diving into why this show wasn't just funny, it was ahead of its time, pushing boundaries in a way that still feels fresh decades later. Stick around, because by the end, you'll see this classic in a completely new light. From the very first episode, Ed, Edd and Eddy established itself as something different. On the surface, it's all about three neighborhood kids pulling off scams that never quite go as planned. But if you look closer, the show's structure, characters, and humor were doing things most cartoons wouldn't try until years later.
You deserve a shake for that! Whoa!
One of the most obvious ways Ed, Edd and Eddy was ahead of its time is its animation. Unlike the smooth, uniform style of most early 2000s cartoons, this show embraced wobbly, exaggerated lines. Characters practically vibrate with energy. It wasn't a mistake. It was a conscious choice to make the world feel alive, chaotic, and slightly off-kilter, reflecting the zany energy of the Ed schemes.
Quack, quack! Ed, you're gonna hurt somebody! This ain't a cartoon!
Most cartoons back then aimed for perfect animation, but this show said, screw it, let's get messy. It created a unique visual identity that stuck with fans, making it instantly recognizable decades later. The technique also made slapstick moments hit harder, as the exaggerated movements made every fall, crash, and collision funnier and more impactful. This style might seem normal now, but at the time, it was radical. It influenced future shows like SpongeBob SquarePants and even Adventure Time, which also embraced quirky, inconsistent animation to make the world feel unpredictable.
I followed all the rules, lived a life of decency and principle, so why didn't I trust my instincts?
At first glance, the Eds are just goofy kids, but their humor is layered. Slapstick meets clever writing, physical comedy is obvious, but the show sneaks in wordplay, sarcasm, and subtle adult jokes without ever feeling forced. Every scam, every rivalry, even the strange rules of the cul-de-sac reflect real-life social dynamics. Think about it. Kids hustling for jawbreakers, forming alliances, and navigating friendships. It mirrors society in miniature, and that's not something every cartoon dared to do. The Eds' personalities were deeply contrasting. Eddy is loud, greedy, and desperate for approval.
Everything about my brother was a lie. I just made things up so people would like me, think I was cool.
Ed, aka Double D, is analytical, cautious, and endlessly frustrated by chaos.
It's just that it's difficult for me to sleep in an unlabeled environment.
Ed is, well, Ed, the lovable wild card.
Breakfast, guys! Finders keepers!
The comedy isn't just in what they do, it's who they are and how they clash. Modern cartoons often rely on gags alone, but Ed, Edd and Eddy tied humor directly to character, making it richer and more memorable. Most shows of the era relied heavily on episodic content. You could watch episodes in any order without missing anything. But Ed, Edd and Eddy subtly played with continuity and character growth. The show built tension over time. Eddy's scams rarely succeed, but each failure adds layers to his character. Minor characters like Kevin, Rolf, and Sarah have arcs that develop across seasons. They weren't just there to serve a joke. They reacted to the world and evolved, which was rare in cartoon comedies of the early 2000s. The series finale, The Big Picture Show, didn't just end the show. It resolved character arcs, answered lingering questions, and gave the audience closure. Most cartoons back then ended with slapstick resets, never giving fans emotional payoff. In other words, this show understood that kids could follow and care about story and character long before storytelling in cartoons became a major trend in the 2010s. Ed, Edd and Eddy dealt with loneliness, failure, and social anxiety, but in a comedy package. The Eds are often outsiders, never quite fitting in with the rest of the neighborhood. Episodes show them struggling with rejection, embarrassment, and disappointment, but they bounce back with creativity and resilience. These themes are subtle, embedded in jokes and gags, so the show stays entertaining while still relatable. It's almost like the show trusted kids to understand nuance, which is something most contemporary cartoons still struggle with. A lot of modern cartoons either go over the top goofy or preach lessons bluntly. Ed, Edd and Eddy walk the line perfectly. Despite being innovative, Ed, Edd and Eddy was sometimes underappreciated during its original run. Cartoon Network was saturated with shows that were either flashy or absurd. Its wobbly animation and chaotic humor were sometimes criticized as ugly or too weird, which made casual viewers overlook the genius underneath. Yet it quietly influenced the next generation of animators and shows, planting seeds that wouldn't fully sprout until years later. Fast forward to today, and the show feels timeless. Here's why. Visual uniqueness. The imperfect, squiggly style still pops in a world of uniform digital animation. Humor style. The blend of slapstick, character-driven humor, and subtle social commentary holds up. Kids laugh, adults notice the depth, the kind of cross-generational appeal that many shows try to achieve but fail. Eddy's desperation, Double D's caution, and Ed's wild innocence are archetypes we still see, but Ed, Edd and Eddy nailed them first, making every interaction feel genuine and unpredictable. People still analyze the cul-de-sac, debate minor characters' roles, and revisit the show for its cleverness. Few shows from the early 2000s have that kind of lasting fan engagement. The pinnacle of the show's brilliance is the big picture show, the series finale. It wrapped up the Ed's journey, gave them emotional depth, and showed how far they'd come without losing the humor that defined the series. It proved that a seemingly silly cartoon could deliver character arcs, resolution, and meaningful storytelling years before that became common in mainstream animation. Fans often cite it as a reason why Ed, Edd and Eddy deserves the title of ahead of its time. The show wasn't just funny, it was smart, risky, and emotionally aware all at once. Ed, Edd and Eddy isn't just a nostalgic relic. It was a trailblazer in animation, humor, storytelling, and character design. Its wobbly lines, clever humor, and heartfelt storytelling set a precedent that modern cartoons still follow. From character-driven jokes to subtle social commentary, it dared to trust its audience to laugh, think, and care, all while being wildly entertaining. This is why, even today, decades later, it still feels fresh, relevant, and downright brilliant. It wasn't just a show about jawbreakers and scams. It was a blueprint for the future of cartoon storytelling.
We're building a little cartoon fan club here. Hit subscribe to join in, and let me know in the comments which scam, scheme, or gag from the Eds made you laugh the hardest.